Arnold, a teacher of the gospel and the Christian faith, martyred in a forest near Paris, A.D. 511. It is stated that in the 11th year of the 6th century, a certain pious teacher by the name of Arnold, not willing to bury the talent given him by God in the earth, but if possible to obtain some spiritual gain for Christ his Saviour by preaching the gospel, exchanged his life for death in the forests of France, and has thus been reckoned among the number of pious martyrs. Concerning this, P.J. Twisk, among others, notes the following for the year 511. When Arnold preached the gospel of Christ and the Christian faith in a forest in France near Paris, he was martyred and buried there by his wife. Note, all the particulars mentioned in respecting Arnold clearly indicate the uprightness of his mind and views, as well as how far he stood aloof from the superstitions of the Roman Church, which superstitions then had already risen very high. The latter especially appears from various circumstances. First, because it is stated that he did not preach the traditions and legends of the Romanists, but the gospel. Secondly, because it is shown what he preached from the gospel, namely Christ and the Christian faith, but nothing about the power of the Roman bishop or about the Roman faith. Thirdly, because it is stated according to ancient writers that having been martyred for said faith, he was buried there, where he had been put to death by his wife. But to have a wife, the Romanists had many years before forbidden to teachers and deacons on pain of deposition. With regard to this, the article established about the year 495 in a certain papal council reads as follows: The priests, that is, those who preach, and deacons shall abstain from taking into themselves wives. If they do not observe this, they shall be deposed from their office. Narrator's note: the practice of priests and teachers taking wives in the Catholic Church continued for many centuries after this, and was only finally abolished by Pope Urban II, the same pope who participated in the First Crusade, and the same pope who was responsible for the beginning of indulgences. Pope Urban did this because he inherited a financial crisis from his predecessors, and seeking to keep the cost of church upkeep under control, he desired to rid himself of the widows and wives of priests. With the stroke of a pen, thousands of wives were separated from their husbands, and thousands of children separated from their fathers. Up until this point, it can be surmised that many teachers of the Roman Catholic faith did still keep wives and children, despite various attempts before this point to end the practice. End narrator's note. Fourthly, because we have found in the ancient registers in which the names of the principal ancient teachers and martyrs are recorded not the least charge laid against this man, either of superstition or anything else, although we searched diligently and had others search. Note: it appears that about 9 years after the death of said martyr, Arnold, namely A.D. 520, a great persecution arose in Arabia against the Christians, of which P.J. Twisk writes the following. A.D. 520, a seditious Jew, who pretended to be the second Moses, caused an awful massacre and persecution of the Christians at Nagra in Arabia, in the region of the Emperor Justin. He slew the pious bishop Arathas and many thousands of Christians. But as we have not been able to obtain reliable information except that which we have shown concerning the bishop Arathas, as to whether he was a true and orthodox bishop, as well as in regard to the many thousands of Christians who were slain with them, as to whether they professed a good profession of faith, which we doubt very much, we will not concern ourselves with them. Nevertheless, it must be considered that among so great a number there were at least some, here and there, who died in the true faith, seeing the same were sometimes scattered in various countries. Of this we will let the well-meaning reader judge for himself.